Hey, this is Sam Black, and I'm trying something different today. I recorded myself drafting my commander cube. I recorded the entire draft, and so I'm going to talk through each of my picks and then give a quick recap of the two games that I ended up playing with the deck that I built. So, if that sounds interesting to you, stick around, check it out. Unfortunately, I have to admit that my camera was slightly uh, out of position, or I held my cards in slightly the wrong place. So you're only gonna it'll work, but it's gonna be a little bit not perfect looking. And this is my first time doing something like this. It'll be better in the future. So opening my first pack, um, something to know going into this. Sorry, I should pause for a second. Something to know going into this is last week I went over a deck where I drafted Mardu, and I know that my like green in my cube is intended to be a little unusual in Commander because I don't have rampant growth and cultivate type cards. So I wanted to try to draft green, ideally blue green, just to show what those decks are like. So I was looking to kind of force or soft force blue green. So I did end up um, doing that. That is not necessarily a matter of taking like the best cards in the pack. Though it's kind of hard to figure out what the strongest cards are in a 20 card pack in this format. But it just there was a bias going into it. I'll be upfront about that. All right, so looking at this pack, understanding that bias, there's a Hornet Queen, Equilibrium, Birds of Paradise, some other cards you can see. I'm not going to try to name all of them. So Atomi, uh, this is the 5 mana creature that's a 3/1 with Cascade, and whenever you cast a spell with convert mana cost 6 or more, it cascades. So I've pulled Atomi and All Seeing Arbiter to the front. Also Beldress, Witherbloom, Birds of Paradise, Hornet Queen. Um, there's a Star Compass that I'm thinking about. Fable of the Mirror Breaker is really good, but I'm not going to take it here because I'm trying to be uh, green or blue green. So uh, I'm going to end up going with All Seeing Arbiter and Itomi. Itomi really wants you to have good cards that cost 6 or more. So All Seeing Arbiter is a good way to make sure that you get to have some fun with Itomi. Um, and so that's what I take. I'm looking to, try to minimize the number of cards that cost 5 in my deck. Try to have my big stuff cost 6 or more, and then have a lot of ramp and Atomi, and that's basically what I want. Body Double is a strong blue card, but it costs 5. I mentioned I'm looking to avoid that. Um, Gil Gilinara or something draws a card whenever you cast a spell that costs 6 or more. So that's like this. It's from the same set as Atomi. They're trying to do the same thing. They work well together. And then there's also the Simulacrum, Elminster Simulacrum, I think, that clone. It's a 6 mana, that key point instant that clones a creature from each other player, which I like. So I take that one. There was a Chrome Shell Crab that was the primary other consideration there. Um, it's really on plan here with two 6 mana cards and two things that pay me off for 6 mana cards. Eldritch Evolution's really good. Stubborn Denial, Clear the Mind. We can only barely see those there. Sorry about that. Um, Archon of Cruelty is really strong, but I'm trying to be blue green. I want to use Atomi here, so I take Stubborn Denial and Clear the Mind over Evolutionary Leap. Sorry, Evolutionary Leap, not Eldritch Evolution. I misspoke earlier. Um, I think I've mentioned before that I'm really, really into being able to loop my deck. I think that's especially important in blue green because you end up being able to like get so many cards into play and draw so many cards. It's really easy to deck yourself if you can't loop. You need to be able to like loop reliably because people are going to try to like counter your stuff that's going to loop. So I want like more than the bare minimum to be able to loop. And then Stubborn Denial is also really important because you're going to, if you're playing blue green, you're getting a lot of stuff on the board and you're going to be the target at some point. And you need a little bit of that stuff to protect you. You don't need a ton of it because you draw so many cards that you can get like pretty reliable access to the one or two counter spells in your deck. But it can be really hard when everyone's teaming up on you if you don't have any of that. So I thought those two cards were really important, which is why I took them over Evolutionary Leap, even though I think Evolutionary Leap's very strong. Um, so just waiting on the other players for a little bit here. I think this is a pretty, as I mentioned, I think my cards work together pretty well here. I have, one step toward looping is really important, and then the synergistic early start that I mentioned. Serum Visions is fine. It doesn't add a ton to the deck. Blue Sun Zenith I like more. Eternal Witness is huge because it's one of those loop cards. And then Beast Whisperer, the 4 mana 2/3 that draws a card when you cast a creature. Really good engine, helps you do that powerful stuff. I thought that was a better way to draw cards than Blue Sun Zenith. It can be really hard to dedicate all of your mana for a turn to just drawing cards. Um, Beast Whisperer can come down earlier. It's like strong, but not so strong that your opponents are going to use one of their the spot removal in this format generally is only used defensively. So like if someone's actively killing you, so people just wait for a sweeper to kill the Beast Whisperer, and usually you can get a good number of cards off of it first. Um, so here, I'm looking for some ramp. I don't really, Kamal's a bit expensive. I don't want Snapcaster because I'm not looking to exile my cards. So I just take Utopia Sprawl and Wayward Swordtooth there, two ramp spells basically, which I'm pretty happy about. Again, I think it's too slow if you just fill your deck with, all giant stuff and no way to accelerate it. And so Swordtooth is a really good way because it lets you get extra lands into play, and they're kind of safe and reliable. And then Utopia Sprawl is nice because it just costs one. There's not a lot of 1 mana acceleration in the cube, so really happy to get a little of that. Also, it's nice that it costs one, but it lives through a lot of sweepers because it's not a creature. So it's a little safer than like Birds of Paradise. Especially in a deck that's only two colors where you don't need like it's very good at fixing your mana, right? Because like it gives you a second color, and sometimes that might not be enough in a 3-color deck, but in a 2-color deck it's basically I think just better than birds most of the time, although it doesn't draw a card off Beast Whisperer. There are some things that look for enchantments in the cube at the moment, although I'm likely to cut more of them because Enchantress hasn't really come together properly. So here I think this pack ends up being pretty empty for me. The only card that's in my colors is the Deep Forest Hermit. And then I end up just taking a Decimate in case I end up finding like a Teamer Commander and splashing red. And it's also like it could be playable off a very light splash. So if I see a Teamer Commander late, or if I find like a blue-red partner to go with my mono-green partner, I could end up being partners instead of Atomi. So take Decimate there. And it also takes a green card away from the table to maybe make it less likely that someone else goes into green. Here, there are 3 cards that are in my colors. Simic Rose Chamber, Tamiya's Safekeeping, and the Ninja. I'm not really looking for the Ninja because I don't think I'm going to have a ton of early creatures. Treasures are good, but I'm just not confident that that's going to work out well as an accelerator. Tamiya's Safekeeping, I have a bunch of expensive, powerful creatures. It might be worth playing to protect them. The problem with it, and why ultimately I end up not playing it in this deck, is that it's really bad to cascade into, and I'm, sort of a cascade themed deck. So I tried to minimize the number of cascade misses, though. I did play Stubborn Denial because, as I mentioned, I think it's just really important what the deck's doing. And I did end up cascading into it in one of my games off of an Apex Devastator. Spoilers, I see that later and take it. But, when you're cascading 5 times because of 1 for the commander plus 4 from the Apex Devastator, it doesn't matter so much if one of them hits a blank. So I saw an Equilibrium and a Hornet Queen, and then some cards that weren't my colors. So I just take the 2 cards I can cast. They're both very good. Equilibrium lets you get creatures out of play, which is pretty important for blue-green. Not a ton of removal, and it also lets you pick up your value creatures. Like you see there, I pull up Eternal Witness to point out that I'm really thinking about the fact that I can bounce my Eternal Witness with Equilibrium there to set up a little engine. And then I get past another Hermit and some cards that aren't in my colors. I take Baleful Mastery as an easy splash if I end up in a situation where I'm splashing something, and then I get past 2 off-color sticks. Fertile Ground's a really good accelerator. Monster Manual, I think, is actually very strong. I want to cast my cards to Cascade, but being able to, flash in your creatures uncounterably is nice. And then I see a couple of blue-green duels. When I'm only 2 colors, I don't like to prioritize dual lands because I think your mana is kind of just good enough most of the time, especially since I'm planning to play a lot of lands in this deck because I know I already have Wayward Swordtooth and I know I'm trying to play a lot of expensive cards. And so I'm thinking I'm going to have like a slightly unusually high land count, which means that I don't really need dual lands. So, and maybe I'll table some of those. So I pass them and just take the uncolored spells. Fertile Ground and Monster Manual both, really help me cast my big stuff earlier. Monster Manual also with the adventure helps me, dig for stuff. So reasonably happy with those. They're not like the strongest cards. Like I don't think I would often take either of those like first pick, first pack, but established in blue green, they're not too bad. There's a Fibblethip, Ulamog, Hedron Archive, Sakashima's Protege, and Ranger class. And I end up going for the expensive cards that I like here to, push my theme. 2 drops that don't accelerate me aren't really a priority here. The Fibblethip and the Ranger class, they're a little off plan. So I take Ulamog and Sakashima's Protege. Sakashima's Protege being a 6 mana Cascade clone-ish. It can only copy things that enter the battlefield this turn. And Ulamog, I mentioned that it can be hard to have enough removal in blue and green, so Ulamog gives me a way to deal with some stuff, and I'm certainly looking to get 10 mana in play sooner rather than later, and certainly at some point in the course of the game. Speaking of getting 10 mana, there's Apex Devastator. And Enclave Cryptologist is the only other card in my colors, so I'll just take those 2. I was going to take Apex Devastator over most cards anyway, but here there's really not a choice. I'm not excited about the Cryptologist. Very likely, I could play it or not. It's not a big deal either way. But it's good enough to take over, trying to hate something. Incidentally, I'm drafting at a table of 7 players in this draft, which is why things aren't tabling as quickly. And then we're going to split into 2 games, 1 game of 4 players and 1 game of 3 players to actually play. So I probably should have mentioned that earlier in terms of, thinking about tabling, but not a lot of cards are coming back because there are 7 players in this draft. So here, I see Jaspera Sentinel, Oracle of Moldiah, Elemental Bond are the cards I'm considering. I end up passing the Jaspera Sentinel because I don't have a ton of early creatures, so it's not going to be easy to tap for mana. And so I take the Elemental Bond and the Oracle of Moldiah. Oracle is great. Elemental Bond is okay. But very excited about Oracle here. It's exactly the kind of card I'm looking for. we have Avenger of Zendikar, Remand, Grazlex, Temple of Mystery, Voracious Hydra, but that one's bad to cascade into. This is a strong pack for me. There are a lot of realistic options. I end up going for the Grazlax and the Remand. I ultimately don't play Grazlax because it's double blue and it's early double blue and wants you to have like other early creatures, and my deck's heavy green. I think my deck would have worked out better if I had maybe the Finale or the Avenger of Zendikar instead. Though I don't think that either one of those would be important. Um, and then there's also Erratic Portal, but it's like kind of mana intensive and slow. Um, so um, yeah, so I take those blue cards for a pack where I had a lot of options. Those were like not super impressive. Remand is fine. It can do some work in that spot where people are teaming up on you, but it's not necessarily going to get the job done. Explore is a big hit, and then there's Rapid Hybridization and the Celestus. I take Explore and the Celestus, kind of like the Celestus for the looting options. I don't end up playing it. I think there's a good chance that if I had Rapid Hybridization, I should have played it. I think that maybe I should have realized that I was just going to want to play a ton of lands and not Mana Rocks, especially because I'm taking the Explorer there and I have Sword Tooth and Oracle of Moldiah. So having Explore and Sword Tooth and Oracle is like the reason that I didn't want to play artifacts that give mana, because like a land is just better because it's like a hit for those things. Um, and so I think I should have figured that out and taken the Rapid Hybridization over the Celestus. I think that was just like a mistake. Whereas like the Grazlax could go either way depending on like what I end up seeing and whether I end up with a few more early creatures or more balanced color situation or something, such that I don't mind the early double blue. But I think I should have known not to take the Celestus there. I get past Chatterfang, which is not actually a card I can play. And Caravan and Thran Dynamo and Sakura Tribe Scout. I know I want the Tribe Scout, and then I'm debating between the mana artifacts. I end up going for the Caravan. Again, I think that was a mistake for the same reason as the Celestus. I should know that I don't want a 3-mana card that taps for 1 mana, whereas Dynamo I might have played to get the big mana jump. So this pack was really surprising because Tropical Island tabled and the bridge didn't. The blue-green artifact land that enters tapped. It turned out one of the players was very highly prioritizing artifacts, and so took the bridge over the Tropical Island. But anyway, I took the Tropical, and there wasn't another card for me, so I took the green-black bridge. There I took Fibblethip and the Locust God. Maybe I end up splashing red somehow. Seemed pretty unlikely. Fibblethip is castable, but not a priority for my deck. And that's the end of pack 2. Pack 3, Panharmonicon, Champion of Wits, Merfolk Skydiver, Terracodon, the Flashback Time Twister, Sour, Hullbreaker Horror. I decide I don't have enough creatures that care about Panharmonicon. But that's I do a little check here for it. I have Witness and some Hermits that I'm not sure if I'm gonna play, and Arbiter and Hornet Queen. So it's basically just when I'm already making a lot of tokens, I can make more tokens or get a card very, very rarely. It's a horrible Panharmonicon deck. So I end up going for the Terracodon and the Hullbreaker Horror. And get some more Boom Booms to do my Cascade stuff with. Here I see Scavenging Ooze, Woodfall Primus, Tireless Provisioner, Parallel Lives, um, which is good with those guys that make a bunch of tokens. Wonder, Spike Weaver. Um, I decided to go for Provisioner, which I know I'm going to take. I think it's great, especially since I have all these ways to put extra lands into play, and the treasure is a big deal. And then I decided to take Spike Weaver as a better way to defend myself than the other cards. People you end up uh, again in spots where people are trying to attack you, and Spike Weaver can really deter that. Or you can just end up in a spot where it doesn't deter it, and they do attack you to try to like remove its counters, and then you just like use them and bounce it and replay it with Equilibrium or pick it up with Witness or whatever. It can, if people don't have an answer to it, it can do a really good job of keeping you alive. And then I see Growing Rights of Itlimoc, which is a nice big ramp spell, perfect for my deck. And Cavalier of Thorns. I care more about ramping than having an answer to a single permanent somewhere, so I take Cavalier of Thorns and Growing Rights over Acidic Slime. Was pretty happy with that pact. Growing Rights in particular is really really good since I have both Hermits. Although I'm not sure that I'm going to play the Hermits because I do want to minimize my number of 5 mana spells because that's the turn when I want to cast my commander, and the Hermits aren't really like doing a lot for me. Like they're not really on plan outside of the Growing Rights. So here I see Broken Wings, Shigeki, Wall of Blossoms, Consider, Leyline of Anticipation, and Blessed Spite. And the guy that when your stuff dies, it becomes forest, which I'm not interested in because I want the stuff in my deck to loop back rather than having it become forests. Takes Shigeki and Blaster Spite. Like I said, I think it's really, really valuable to be able to loop your deck, so I get more regrowth and more shuffles. So, really, really happy about that pack shoring up my ability to make sure that I can execute my primary game plan of not run out of cards while drawing a ton of cards and cascading a bunch. Just reviewing my options, seeing that I have a Fibblethip I can play. It's good with the Growing Rights of Itlimoc and the Beast Whisperer. Pull the Tamiya's Safekeeping out of consideration due to the stuff that I was saying about it not playing well with Cascade. This is where I realized that I'm not interested in those mana rocks. Cast Belligad Recovery, Nature's Claim, and then this Fractal Bloom, who's really interesting because I have both Hermits, and so I can make like a ton of copies of some really good creature. And then I see the Mending of Dominaria and Fight Rigging. I don't want Fight Rigging because I'm always afraid of permanently exiling something good with Hideaway if I have like this kind of deck. Um, so I end up going for Mending and Fractal Bloom. I don't end up. I decide ultimately that I want to stick with Atomi and to not play the Fractal Bloom package in my deck, but I liked the option here. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I took that over the Recovery, which would have been, solid, but I had plenty of regrowth effects already. And then the mending, I'm really happy about. That I have like a number of ways to mill myself already, and so it can put a whole bunch of lands into play in addition to being another looping type card. This pack's really bad for me. I have Suspend and a dual land that I don't even think I'm going to use because I don't really want ETB tap dual land in this deck because of what I said earlier about my colored situation being good. Suspend, I could have played, it would be fine. I ended up not playing it because I wanted to play a lot of lands. Um, and so I, just don't have room for stuff that's not directly contributing to the plan, even if maybe a little bit of interaction could have helped. Regrowth, I'm pretty excited about. Dig through time, I don't want because I don't want to exile my stuff. There's resculpt, which I think I ultimately didn't play, but again, maybe I should have. It's hard to know exactly how much interaction you need in this kind of deck. I think I aired a little bit light on this one. Tough to make cuts though. Just God Pharaoh's Gift and Echo Vions, I think is the name of that flashback time twister. I take those because they're castable, but I don't end up playing either of them. This pack has nothing I can cast, so I take the two monocolored cards because it's, I don't know why I'm hate drafting in this, but I am. Just, can't stop spiking. And then I get past Necro and a dual land that is off color. So that was the draft, and now I'm going to switch over to a slideshow of some images from building my deck. Oh no, sorry. Bear with me here. I need to start from the beginning. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is my deck. As I ended up building the final version. So this is 29 lands, which is like 48 cards in a 99 card deck. So really practicing what I preach here in terms of playing kind of extreme land counts in decks that I think want that. This is more lands than I have played in a 60 card deck in Commander Cube. I was really happy with this build. It played really well. I definitely wanted this much mana. I have Ulamog and Apex Devastator and Terastodon and 2 7s and 3 6s and a commander that costs 5 and then 7 and then 9, and I want to keep recasting it. And with Clear the Mind and Blaster Spite, and the Mending of Dominaria, I'm increasing the density of spells in my deck as the game goes. Like I'm not fetching lands, but I'm shuffling the used non-lands back into my deck. And yeah, so and I when you have like Sakura Tribe Scout and Explore and Tireless Provisioner and Wayward Swordtooth and Oracle of Moldiah, um, you need, and Mending of Dominaria also really likes to mill lands. And so I can just play so many more than one land per turn on average. So I need to draw a lot of lands to make that happen. And then I have so many card draw engines in terms of, to some extent, Oracle, making sure that you draw spells a little bit more, but Beast Whisperer, Monster Manual to some extent, All Seeing Arbiter, and then mana sinks that aren't exactly card draw, like Shigeki. Um, so, yeah, so this was the build. I think my biggest mistake was probably playing the Fibblethip. I think I should have played an interactive spell instead of the Fibblethip. I think that Fibblethip wasn't really contributing to my game plan, whereas Resculpt or Suspend would have given me some better interaction and helped protect me. I think that was a mistake. I was pretty happy with my other cards though. So let's get to the games. I say games plural. I did end up actually playing 2 games with this deck. So this is kind of the early game. I started off with Shigeki and then activated it and then played Tireless Provisioner in a land and replayed Shigeki. That was kind of my early game. The Brago player just played Dismantling Wave on turn, like did nothing on 1 and 2, and Dismantling Wave on 3 to deal with a Parallel Lives and force me to use Shigeki. And then the Brago player played Brago on 4. The Bruce Tarl and Tanya the Bloodsower player was a Naya aggro deck who was kind of dominating the early game with Luminarch Aspirant into Incubation Druid, with the Aspirant putting a counter on the Druid to get a big mana jump on turn 3. And then that was play Parallel Lives on turn 3 on it, as the first player. And then that got killed by the Dismantling Wave. And then over the next, then Xenagos and Xenagos was played, and then the next turn, Tanya. The turn that this picture was taken was after the player played Tanya, gave it haste with Xenagos. Oh, I guess must have been Tanya the previous turn, put a counter on it with the Aspirant. Then this turn plays Xenagos, Tanya, and attack to make 6 Saprolings. And then the Shroom player played Veto on 3 and Grim Hireling on 4, and then attacked with Veto, made 2 treasures, and sacked one of the treasures for mana to sack the other treasure to kill the Aspirant. And that's everything that had happened in the early game in way too much detail, but that's how we got here. So we go around the table one more time, maybe 2 more times. I get Atomi and Equilibrium down, and Bruce Tarl came down. There was a Grasp of Fate and a Bruce Tarl. Bruce Tarl targeted Tanya, and so did Xenagos. So then it made 12 more Saprolings. So then there were 18 Saprolings. I've had 2 turns. That player's had 1 turn, I think. And the Brago player evoked a Muldrifter and did some Witness Tomorrow's Watcher for tomorrow, whatever. There was an Animate Dead out of the Shroom player that took my Oracle of Moldiah, but then I bounced the Oracle to my hand with the Equilibrium. And so anyway, this Saproling situation is getting way out of hand, so the Brago player plays Austere Command to kill all creatures, leaving my Equilibrium in play and leaving the Grasp of Fate. Resetting. But the Xenagos also stays in play, which is a big deal. But getting those commanders out of play and dealing with the 18 Saprolings to help buy the table some time. But it did not buy the table a lot of time. The Xenagos player played Terror of the Peaks, and over the next 1 or 2 turns, played Terror of the Peaks and Anointed Procession and Adeline. And then Xenagos to Adeline. This was over 2 turns. It was 1 turn to play, I think, whatever. Anyway, this happened. The Adeline mostly came at me. The Terror of the Peaks killed some stuff, and when Adeline attacked, it made 6 humans, and then there are some Saprolings too, I guess. It was a lot of damage. I took 24 damage. Fortunately, that was mostly the first damage I took. The Austere Command did not do a good job of keeping the Bruce Tanya player in check. So then after I took 24 from that attack, on the next turn, the Shroom player attacked me with a Witness, or a Champion of Wits, wearing a Bone Horde that had like 12 creatures in the graveyard or something, to put me down to exactly 1. And then after combat, played All Is Dust, leaving me with a treasure, and but it also killed the Grasp of Fate, which gave me a Tireless Provisioner, gave the Shroom player a Grim Hireling, and returned Brago to the Zerdu player. Sorry, it's a Zerdu player, not a Brago player. The Zerdu player just had Brago. So I'm at one, but at least all of that Xenagos stuff has been dealt with. So then I make a food with tireless provisioner to try to stabilize, but the aggressive Nyadak had a glory bringer to finish me off. My hand is visible at the bottom there. A ton of powerful spells that I didn't have a chance to cast. Um, Maybe if I had had a little bit more interaction, I could have dealt with the Adeline or the Glorybringer or something. I didn't end up drawing the Fibblethip, so if the Fibblethip had just been an interactive spell, it wouldn't have saved me here. But the principle applies. Um, so, you see, I had a ton of lands in play. My deck was very much doing its thing, but blue green's thing is often fly too close to the sun, become scary, get killed by someone who's actually good at doing damage. So that was the end of the first game for me. For, the Brago player ended up, or the Zerdy player ended up kind of taking over from here with like uh, teleportation circle with Skyclave apparition and illuminate primordial to kind of permanently answer most of everything else that was happening, and the other players couldn't really find their way out of that. The shroom player, I think, played a few more sweepers, but the blink deck was generating enough value to recover from that, and the aggro deck couldn't get out of the lock of just getting all their permanents killed over and over. Um, so then I played a second game. I didn't take detailed notes of this second game, but here's where it got to at some point. I have a Growing Rights of Illamok with 6 boars in play because the Hinata player had Curse of the Swine to turn all the other creatures into swine, which is the kind of exiled pile under my Clear the Mind there. But I still had Growing Rights of Illamok, so with those 6 boar plus my hand, I was able to spend at least 30 mana in a turn once or twice this game, which was enough to generate a really, really powerful position. And I was able to, pretty meaningfully keep the other players in check with like Hullbreaker Horror and Ulamog and casting all of my spells because I had like Apex Devastator and Atomi going and literally cast every spell in my deck except for like when I cast Apex Devastator, it cascaded into every card in my deck. I left the Stubborn Denial in my deck, but everything else was in play in my hand or exiled or in my graveyard. And then I clear the minded it all back into my graveyard so that I could keep going. The deck looping really mattered a lot in this game. And not very long after that, they dealt with, there was a sweeper that dealt with that set of creatures, the, Hornet Queen and stuff in the graveyard, is in the graveyard. But, and like they dealt with the Equilibrium, but Hullbreaker Horror does a reasonable Equilibrium impression. I was using Hullbreaker Horror I actually played Ulamog, exiled some threats, and then played Eternal Witness to pick up the Ulamog. So I was going to be able to swap between Eternal Witness and Ulamog with Stubborn Denial, Remand, and Blaster Spite to protect myself with instance with Hullbreaker Horror. So I could, counter thing like I could Stubborn Denial a spell and bounce my Eternal Witness, and then if they still had another thing, I could remand it, or I could Blaster Spite and bounce the thing that I was trying to stop. And so the other players discussed whether they should concede there, and I was like, well, I have 2 pieces of interaction up right now, and in the future it's going to get a lot worse for you than that. And I'm going to start, exiling all of your lands with this Ulamog. And so we didn't actually play to the end of the game, but I think I would have also killed them in about a turn or two, since I had, like a 9-9 and a 10-10 and a 7-8 in play. So this is kind of the end game that I'm often looking. This, not these exact cards, but uh, when I am blue green in my cube, I'm often trying to have a little bit of counter magic, a ton of ramp, um, and good ways to like loop my deck and answers. A few ways to answer opposing permanents, and I'm expecting all of my stuff to get killed and to need to shuffle it back in, draw it again, play it again. My blue green decks are really really grindy. So the ramp element of blue green is very very present here, even if it's not like the put extra lands into play is very present. Even if I'm not searching my library to put them into play, I'm just drawing cards and playing them from my hand, but I'm getting extra ways to play them faster. So it ends up playing out in very much a conventional blue green style, even if it doesn't have, like farce you can cultivate to do it specifically. Like if you just draw a few extra cards, um, uh, the sword tooth does a really good impression. Um, oh, and that little hand drawn faded crown in the corner is the monarch. That's that's the other thing that I have there. I don't own a monarch token for some reason. Um, so anyway, that was my night of Commander Cube. I hope this gave you a much better idea of um, how these games play, what kind of decks are available, what sorts of thought processes I'm having when I'm drafting this cube, and um, this was a new endeavor for me. Doing like taking video on my phone and then transferring it to the computer, and whatever was involved in making this. It's very low production value, but a new step, a step for me. So if you liked this, please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends. I'm hoping that there's interest in this so that I can, I can do more of this if people like it. So let me know. And thanks. And that's it for now. Bye, everyone.